Okay, hello everybody. Hopefully you can see me and hear me okay. Someone could just confirm that for me. That would be great.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. So, thank you very much for joining us. This is really exciting for us. So, let me just quickly, what am I trying to do? I just want to play my slideshow. Okay, so we'll get started. So, a lot of you are new to our group and haven't attended our Mainframers events before, so just a quick update on what our Mainframers group is. So we're a fairly small community so far of people that are just really passionate about the mainframe, and a group of us noticed that going to conferences and things, we were often seeing the same people or people quite high up and get to make the decisions, and we wanted to build a community based in London where we could be around mainframers that all share different kind of excitements as us and what we do, and try and get involved in a mainframe community. So this is a London-based thing, but obviously in the current situation, we've had to put our London event on hold and decided to do it on WebEx instead. And this has actually worked out great because we've got speakers from around the world, we've got attendees from around the world, and this has turned into a much bigger thing. So this is quite an exciting day for us, and we hope that you can stay involved in the community and maybe set up communities around the world wherever you're based if it's something that interests you. So those of us that actually run the kind of MainframerZ Meetup, it's quite a wide range of us. We're from different companies, we have different backgrounds, different job roles, and we'll just do this in our spare time because we are passionate about the mainframe and trying to bring people together and learn from each other. So we've got various different avenues that you can try and keep in contact with us outside of this. So we have our meetup page, which is where we post our meetup groups, like our actual events. And in there, we post like the pictures from the events and things like that, and people often post like questionnaires or questions that we want answered. We also have a Slack workspace. And in here we've got different channels around different things, like a DevOps channel, a channel around what we want to discuss in future events. So we'd really encourage you to join that. And if you have the time to set that up now, that would be really helpful as well if you could ask questions on there, because then those conversations can continue beyond just today. So we also have our LinkedIn page where we post content to, and our Twitter page, which is quite active as well. So I'm not sure how each of you have managed to find your way here, but please do keep in touch with us beyond here and join our other channels as well. So what we want to go through today is we're just having a quick introduction now of what we are, what we do. We're going to watch a quick 4-minute video from Rosalind about kind of an introduction to what DevOps is before we dive deeper into slightly different topics. Once we've watched that video, we're going to have a few different lightning talks. We've got a variety of speakers talking about a variety of different DevOps themed things on the mainframe. And then at the end, we're going to have a kind of Q&A session where you can ask questions to them. So what we'd like you to do is throughout the talks, please feel free to ask questions either in the Q&A box in WebEx, or if you can on Slack, that would be even better. And what we'll do is we don't know how smoothly the technology is going to go yet, but when we're switching between speakers, I will ask some questions to the speaker that's just binned while we're kind of filling that gap, and then any other questions we'll come back to at the end when we have a big panel Q&A session with all of the speakers. So please do join our Slack channel and ask questions in the general channel. So this session is going to be all around DevOps on mainframe. And each event will focus on a different topic area. So if you have ideas for other topic areas in future, please do let's get in touch. It just helps us to focus in what those talks are going to be on. So I'm just going to share this video, which is from Rosalind.
What is DevOps? DevOps is a cultural transformation. It's a way of working. It's a way of working as an organization, bringing everyone together, breaking down the silos. When we think about DevOps, well, it's a term that's been used for a while now. It's probably a term that's going to go away soon, but it's really handy for a Twitter feed. It really should be biz, dev, sec, inf, ops maybe, or some other combination. It's really about everyone working together, breaking down all those silos and bringing everyone to collaborate. But it's a little bit more than that. It's the cultural transformation. It's changing the processes, but you need the tools to support that. And it's really important to recognize that the tools that users are going to use make a difference. They influence whether or not this cultural change is going to work or not. So at the core of most successful DevOps transformations, there's a pipeline. And this pipeline provides that underlying infrastructure for the automation, visibility, and transparency that's needed for this cultural change. That pipeline provides those modern tools that everyone needs in order to do all of their practices. And in this new DevOps world, everyone becomes a developer. And I know that might seem a little scary, but really, everyone's writing things. Everyone's doing something. That something should all be SCM managed. Once it's SCM managed, it can flow through the pipeline just like everything else. And that gives you full traceability, it gives you the transparency, and it makes auditors happy. And yes, I brought up auditors. Auditors are a critical part of this transformation. Being able to satisfy those separation of duties requirements, all the regulatory requirements that many of you are under, it's critical to be able to satisfy those requirements. And by having a DevOps pipeline and living in a DevOps culture, you satisfy those just by doing it the right way. All of those quality checks are just part of the pipeline. This pipeline is the core, but it's people working together. So no matter what you hear anyone say about technology and tools, they are important, but you still have to change the process, the culture, the way people work. And there are numbers of ways to do that. IBM has the garage method that allows you to come in and learn how to do this transformation. Many companies use a dojo approach to allow them to transfer their own company, help them understand how to do these new ways of working. New ways of working. That's what we want to do. We want to make everyone better value, safer, happier, faster. Or something like that. That's a quote from Jonathan Smart from DevOps Enterprise Summit, and it's close. The point is, we're making people happier because the process is removing those tasks we don't want to do. It's automating the mundane and allowing everyone to focus on the business value and delivering true business value to the organization. DevOps is at the core of any digital transformation, at the core of any modernization. It applies to all systems from mobile to mainframe. Everyone's involved, the business all the way through running system. That's what we need to get to. We need to get to this new way of working. We need to make people happier. We need to have a safer culture. We need to have this culture of experimentation. Let's try it. I don't mean experimentation in production such that something's broken. I mean experimenting with different ways of working with our clients. Making sure we learn, fail fast, not fail in production, but fail fast, understand what the problems are, and allow us to move forward. Hopefully this has given you a better introduction to what DevOps really is, and you can help transform to a DevOps culture within your own organization.
Great, so that was a very interesting video from Rosalind. Okay, so Rosalind will be talking to us further later on. So the agenda for what we're going to go through is we're going to have Atul first talking about KPIs, digital transformation, and then we've got Robbie who's going to be talking through his experience between IBM and working with business partners. We've got Rose talking about Zowe, we've got Will and Mike talking about Galassa, and Rosalind talking about infrastructure as code at the end. So just a quick shout out for if you are willing and able to get involved further, if you enjoyed today. So we're really looking for help with getting more organisers involved in the team. So this is a time commitment of around 4 hours a month. So this is just having a couple of phone calls a month, deciding what we want to do next as our next event, and then some follow-up activities working towards that next event. We tend to try and run the events quarterly, but we think we're going to run them more often at the moment while we can do it remotely and hopefully have more people involved. We're looking for sponsors who can, this doesn't take much time, and this is more around sponsoring food or drink for our in-person events and providing different things actually at the events, and also helping out with providing us with venues and things like that. We're always after speakers, so this can be kind of as much or as little time commitment as you'd like. So for example, with a WebEx event, it's just kind of preparing your own slides and being available on the day to present them. We're interested in getting recruiters to the event so people can hear about different things going on. We're interested in getting hosts that will help out with actually hosting the event, and obviously wanting more of you in the audience and attending each event and just having that kind of engagement. So our first session is going to be from Atul.
So firstly, thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today. I think the topic I've chosen today is really important because it's coming up at the majority of the clients I work with. So maybe what I should do first of all is explore what role I have currently. So I work with CompuWare, and my role is transformed from being a technical account manager to becoming more of a DevOps advisor, so helping customers in their transformation journey. So I may not have all the answers, but I can always go to the right people to get support and help that I need to work with our clients. And for those of you who don't know CompuWare, so we are a 40-something-year-old company, but we are now behaving like a startup. So we have actually transformed ourselves from waterfall processes to agile. We've embraced DevOps in its totality. And we are now delivering new products and innovation to the market every 90 days. So it's a massive change from how we used to work. So we live and breathe DevOps ourselves in our labs, in our marketing, in our all of our various different departments. So we felt we had to do that first before we can say to our customers, these are the kinds of things you should be following. So any guidance we provide, we've learned the lessons ourselves from that as well. So why otherwise listen to CompuWare? So in my next slide, so you may want to access some resources which discuss how we as CompuWare have been influencing the DevOps market. And I've given you some resources here. So the first one is where we were invited to be part of the fireside chat at the various different DevOps Enterprise Summit events in London and in Las Vegas as well. So it's a great video, and there's some great insights where our CEO, Chris O'Malley, is discussing with Gene Kim some of the aspects of our transformation. So some great lessons to learn there. We also had a visit from Gene Kim and Mick Kirsten, so two renowned leaders in this market, evangelists and thought leaders really. They visited our data center, and they said they were blown away by what they saw. So this is in terms of how we ourselves practice DevOps within our organization. So there's a podcast link here where Gene Kim is discussing his experience of the visit and what he learned that day. So I think that would be quite useful for anybody. And the final link on the screen here really is about it's actually the Unicorn Project. It's a book that some of you may be familiar with, and if not, I would highly recommend it. And there are chapters in there directly influenced by what Gene Kim and Mick Kirsten saw at our data center. And in fact, there is a podcast by Mick Kirsten, and the link is on the screen now, where they discuss their experiences of what they saw, and also how that affected some of the chapters of the Unicorn Project as well. So a lot of discussion around KPIs and metrics there as well. So one statement I put up on the screen now, I think many of you will actually agree with this, and that is that the drive for outpacing competitors and delivering innovative solutions has never been so evident. So now with the fast-paced change in the marketplace, and even now with the current situation regarding the coronavirus, organizations have to adapt and pivot to cope with that. And one such example is just today, you may have read in the news already, that Dyson, which is a technical lead in terms of innovation and technology in the UK, is now changing some of its direction to create ventilators to provide the UK government and save lives. So this is a company that currently produces vacuum cleaners, hair products, for example, and many other products. But they're now turning their hand at creating ventilators. So very quick pivoting, but they can only do that if they've got the ability to change direction and to have the right metrics at hand to create quality products. So the three categories of KPIs I'm talking about today fall into these categories. So first of all, velocity, the speed at which you can deliver innovation to the marketplace. Efficiency, how effective it can be delivering that. And all organizations are now struggling with budget, they're struggling with resources. How can they balance that to drive efficiency and deliver and delight their customers? And the final key one there is quality. It's all very well delivering fast, but if you can't maintain quality, then your customers are not going to be delighted. So it was interesting to hear Rosalind speak earlier about making sure we change in processes, we have the right people in place, and we have the right tools in place. I think to complement all of that, we've got to have the right metrics in place if we're going to make sure that we follow the right roadmap to the end result that we're trying to desire here at the moment. So let me first of all discuss CompuWare's our own digital transformation and where we are currently. As we transformed from waterfall to agile, so we have more than doubled our developer productivity, and I'll talk a bit about how we measure that. And we've increased our developer effectiveness by tenfold. And that's important because we want to be delivering greater innovation to our end customers, but we have the same amount of resources, so we've got to be more effective in how we do it. So I'll talk a bit about how we come to some of those metrics. We've been able to identify 25% more trapped defects while decreasing the number of escape defects. Now, what I mean by there is that in our testing cycles, we're identifying far more defects early on before any code is released out for general availability to our customers. So, and that's quite impressive, seeing that we are increasing our velocity as well to our end users. And the data that I'm going to be sharing with you today is from our own platform called Z Advisor, which is it's a complementary solution we provide to all of our customers. Because one thing we've noticed in our engagements is that all our customers are very eager, enthusiastic to move forward in terms of implementing the best products, implementing changes in processes, bringing in the right experts. But sometimes what they're lacking is, how do I measure that we're headed in the right direction? So those metrics are going to be really important for them. And let me share with you some of the metrics that we've collected ourselves over the last few years. So before, in terms of when we were working waterfall, our percentage of innovation right at the top of the screen here was just over 36%. Okay, so which means that is the time and effort we're spending on creating new capabilities, new functionality for our customers to enjoy. And to the right of that, the mean time to resolution of any defects identified was around 74 days, which is quite high, but that's what the marketplace was like at the time. Okay, so customers not delighted, but that's just the way things were at the time. As we moved over to agile ways of working, you can see the trend here in terms of the percentage innovation just shot up, and it's now sitting at around 88%. So 88% of our engineering team's time is spent on innovating. So creating new products, creating new capabilities, enhancing customer required new capabilities. All of that is being put into place for engineering teams. And if you look on the right of that, our mean time to resolution has dropped down to 20 days. So, and that's an average. So what we're saying there is, if you can spend more time innovating and less time firefighting, we can be far more competitive in the marketplace, and we can deliver more of what our customers desire. Okay, so this is all about being faster at what we do, and the faster we are, we can beat the slower organizations. Okay, but we've got to maintain a roadmap to the right goal, which is to deliver quality, better, faster, and make sure we delight our customers. So moving forward to the next slide, one thing we must bear in mind is that any metrics that you choose to work with are probably going to be specific to your industry, may be specific to your organization, may even be specific to your department. And just to back that up, I often run workshops with organizations where we have various different teams from different departments. So you may have development teams, you may have testing teams, systems programmers, DPAs, and so on. And we asked each of them to sit there and make a note of some of the key measures and metrics that will be important to them. So for example, for operations leads, it may be important that they measure the rate at which they're able to create the throughput of their batch applications. Okay, so are they actually finishing on time for the SLA? If there are constraints in the way, what are they? Can they automate anything in that field? So for test teams, it may be how we can overcome the constraint of creating test data, valid test data before they run their tests, and then how long it takes us to then actually validate the test results. And if they can automate that somehow, simplify it, and minimize those constraints, they're going to reach a better rate of flow across whatever phase of lifecycle they're working with, and deliver faster and to a higher quality. So choose your metrics that matter to you. Don't go with any metrics that are industry standard or that are always recommended to you. Always double check them, validate them, and make sure they're important to you and help guide you in the right direction. Now, in terms of any of us, we all have to make certain decisions as part of our jobs. And in making those decisions, we need some data, and those are the metrics I'm talking about today. So there's a number of doors open to us. The ones we choose have to be dictated by the data and the information and the intelligence we have so that we know which door to go through. So I'm going to show you a number of different graphics now, and these are all from our Advisor dashboard. And you may have your own internal ones as well, but the key thing is that your metrics themselves. And I thought I'd put some up for discussion. You may disagree with some of them, you may agree with some of them as well, but it's important to have that in mind, really. So first of all, here are some examples of velocity KPIs. So mean time to repair. So it's important that we consider when we do get any issues identified, and these may be the development lifecycle or maybe from production. How long does it take us to repair that issue? And what is the process that we go through? Now, I'm not saying the 19 days you see on the screen here is good or bad, but if you want to improve that 19 days or bring it down further, what kind of things can we do? And to analyze this, one of the tools that we tend to use is an exercise where we do value stream analysis. So we try to map out what is the process of actually repairing a fault that's been diagnosed already. And then based on that, we can identify what are the key things, key tasks that we performed. Are we relying on any specific individual, for example, because of the expertise or experience of the application? Are we relying on any specific environment to be available so we can replicate the issue? So these areas may be constraints. And if we can somehow overcome or minimize those constraints, we can bring that figure down. And bringing it down in the right direction is always a good thing. But again, I'm not saying 19 days is a good thing or a bad thing, but always strive to improve. Okay, so the second one here on the right of that is packages deployed every week. So currently 36 packages are being deployed every week. Now, again, we may want to increase that in terms of the number of packages we're deploying, but there might be another component to that, which is just to the right of it, is how many components are being deployed. So if we have fewer deployments of packages, but a greater number of components being deployed, sometimes that may be seen as a risk. So we're putting live, let's say 40,000 components in one deployment. Now, that may introduce a high level of risk because there's more components going live, there's more chance of something going wrong. In the agile way of working, should we be having more frequent package deployments, but with fewer components? That may help us to better manage any issues that come up afterwards as well. So that's for your organization to decide on, but the metrics are there. And just below that, we have some more metrics as well. So I won't go through all of them, but let's take the second one in the middle there. So the QA testing time. So 2 days a week as part of the sprint being taken up in testing. And you may look at that and say, okay, 2 days is pretty good, but there may still be opportunity to bring that down further. And how, you might ask? So there may be ways of exploiting virtual environments. You bring up a virtual environment, pre-populated with the data that's required for your testing, pre-populated with a full environment for your testing, and we can then automate our tests as well. But furthermore, when you automate tests, there's going to be a whole lot of results to be analyzed. So wouldn't it be great if we can somehow automatically analyze those as well to pinpoint where there's issues and where there's no issues, so pass and fail type scenarios. So these kind of metrics can guide us to say, right, I'm not happy with that 2 days out of 2 weeks being spent on testing. How can I bring that down even further? But if you don't have the metric in the first place, we don't know whether we're being effective in our testing or not. Okay, so there's some examples of velocity type metrics, and please feel free to jump in and ask questions as I'm going through.
Atul, are we okay to just wrap this up within the next minute or so to move on to the next speaker?
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. We can always come back at the end if there's more you want to cover in the question.
Sure. Okay, we'll do that. So maybe I'll just pick on a couple of slides. So this one I talked about here, about in terms of number of escape events. So it's important we measure in our testing effort how many events we are actually capturing and how many are escaping into production, because that's where we're going to feel the real pain. And that also leads us to the right of that in terms of fallback ratio. As we accelerate our development life cycle, things will go wrong in production. How often are we falling back to the previous release of the application? And if that's at a high rate, we want to look at why is that happening, and also what can we do proactively to get better quality code into production as well. And the bottom one I already talked about in terms of innovation ratio as well. So these are just an example of some of the metrics you may want to consider. And then finally, if you want to learn more about some of the key metrics and how we collect them, there is more detail on our website around GAdvisor, so you can Google that, search for that, or come back to us afterwards as well to ask for more information around that. But I just thought it'd be a nice topic to bring out there, because people often are very much in a rush to implement new tools, new processes, new pipelines, but without really knowing what is the end goal and how effective are we in doing that. So I'll stop it there in that case, and then happy to take any questions now or a bit later on as well.
Perfect, thank you. So we're going to switch straight over to Rose. We're mixing up the order slightly.
So hi everyone, greetings from the US. It's great to be here virtually with all of you. I'm going to do something maybe a little bit unconventional. I'm actually going to open with my closing remarks. I wanted to make sure that you leave our virtual forum with 5 important mainframe DevOps takeaways. So let's talk about them. So takeaway number 1, modernization begins with DevOps tools already in use. Takeaway 2, open first empowers freedom to choose. Takeaway 3, Zowe CLI enables off-platform access to on-mainframe services. Takeaway 4, CLIs power automation and innovation. And takeaway 5, the roadmap includes both native and off-platform tools. So let's dive in a little bit deeper on each one of these takeaways and actually start at the beginning. So modernization begins with DevOps tools already in use and applying them to existing mainframe processes. Essentially what we're saying here is go ahead and modernize in place. You've got the tools. In fact, proven modern DevOps open source tools already exist, are in use, and probably have internal champions and or experts in your company. Tools that enable and support CI/CD, test automation, testing frameworks, language-specific code editors, task runners, and various scripting languages. And traditionally, these tools have been applicable only to mobile, cloud, and distributed environments. Until recently, that is, when in 2018, open source was introduced to the mainframe, which leads us to takeaway 2. Open first empowers freedom to choose, which addresses both DevOps and modernization. The Linux Foundation's open mainframe project Zowe is a modern open source interface that bridges the mainframe to popular off-platform tooling and automation. Project Zowe not only introduces open source and the power of the open source community to mainframers, it dramatically changes the available tooling landscape for both DevOps and modernization efforts with the mainframe. So you may ask, how so, Rose? Here's how. Zowe is foundationally services-oriented. The Zowe components enable off-platform access to mainframe services, and in particular, Zowe CLI, the command line interface, that's what CLI stands for, enables CLI API-driven development. It essentially makes remote or off-platform mainframe access look and feel like any other platform access. Platforms that are very familiar to enterprise architects and next-gen staff, both capable and comfortable working in a command line. The open-first approach empowers teams to decide how best to meet the needs of the business, leveraging tools they know in a manner in which they are proficient. Which takes us to takeaway 3. Zowe CLI enables off-platform access to on-mainframe services. And this is really important because it opens doors to a multiple of available open source technologies and offers tremendous flexibility with on-mainframe product integrations. For example, mainframe teams can interact with CI/CD, a continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline, orchestration tool or tools like Jenkins, or testing frameworks like Jest, while at the same time interacting with traditional mainframe solutions. This is easily achieved through Zowe's extensibility. For the CLI component of Zowe, the extensions are called plugins. The CLI and plugins run locally on your machine and generally communicate to the mainframe through ZOSMF services or product APIs. At Broadcom, in addition to backing the open-first strategy with our support offerings for Zowe, we have built enterprise-grade CLI plugin interactions for tools like Endeavor, FileMaster Plus, OpsMBS, and we're adding IMS, JCL Check, and others. IBM has built the same for ZOS Connect, Case Deploy, IMS, and many others. So the list of mainframe resources reachable by the Zowe CLI is rapidly expanding, essentially allowing you to sort of stay the course with your existing tooling and practices that have supported your business for decades and minimizing disruption. This is a key reason why it is important to CLI-enable mainframe native tooling. Additionally, if we go on to takeaway 4, CLIs power automation and innovation. For DevOps engineers, CLIs are a foundational tool for scripting automation. They are essentially a tool of the trade. If we consider our first 3 takeaways, going back to modernization begins with DevOps tools already in use, then open first empowers freedom to choose, and Zowe CLI enables off-platform access to on-mainframe services, and we present them to your DevOps engineer, they'll happily begin expanding their NPM, Python, JavaScript, any of these automation scripts to incorporate commands that unite mainframe processes like source code checkouts paired with, say, for example, a SonarQube code quality scan, or a security scan. And similarly, with commands like source code check-ins, paired with tools like Jenkins, Bamboo, Urban Code Deploy, or Atomic Continuous Delivery Automation, that have the ability to manage enterprise deployments and incorporate testing using automated testing frameworks like Mocha. Point being, they're not learning new tools. They're incorporating what they already know and use. Furthermore, we found Zowe to be energizing for developers. At Broadcom, we recently ran a Zowe hackathon in 4 of our R&D centers, and the results were actually stunning. DevOps tools and skill sets are hot. Teams are anxious to learn and use them. We've actually never seen mainframe teams feel more empowered and excited. So here's the bottom line. Takeaway 5. Your roadmap to success, the recipe, so to speak, uses Zowe CLI to leverage both native and off-platform tools. Our design thinking workshops are listening events with customers centered around understanding the as-is state, which is essentially your existing state, meaning your existing tools inventory and the processes that you're currently using, and also understanding the desired to-be state. Through these workshops, we've learned most customers begin their modernization journey with creating CI/CD pipelines, and in particular, embedding code scans with their mainframe-centric delivery process. Zowe CLI serves as the foundation for scripting mainframe actions, while Jenkins serves to house and execute scripts. This enables the feedback loop that's inherent to a CI/CD pipeline without changing the day-to-day processes. This also serves as a launching point for onboarding additional automation. So where to next? Some customers transition to enterprise delivery, merging mainframe in with other platforms. Others begin to tackle test automation. All leverage enterprise tool sets that make sense and are most cost-effective. And they do it without disrupting the finely tuned engines that are already running the business. Bottom line, their strategy for DevOps is simple. Follow the success patterns used by distributed teams. Leverage open source first, and then use off-platform DevOps tools, loosely coupled with mainframe services. And embrace open source and an open approach that makes the mainframe more like other IT platforms. And finally, for getting started, stay the course with existing tooling, complement and extend them with tools and practices that drive modern DevOps and modernization to the mainframe. Great example, add off-host code scans, introduce Jenkins as your orchestrator. This approach not only sets your path for enabling DevOps, it also offers next gens an easy transition to the mainframe. So this was fast and probably high level. I hope you found it helpful. If you're interested in a deeper dive or more details, my colleagues will be hosting a full hour-long webinar on this topic next week. Don't miss it. Register at devops.com. And I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Rose. And if you send us the details for that event, we'll post it on our pages so that people can find it as well. That's okay?
Perfect. Sure.
Thank you very much. Okay, so next up, we're going to move on to Robbie.
So, hi everybody, I'm Robbie Avill, and this is the first ever presentation I've done where I'm not looking at the people that I'm talking to, so I'm just going to assume that every joke's landing and that everyone's listening intently. It does help my ego and help me feel better about this, so just bear with me. So to introduce myself a little bit and to give a little background about myself, my favorite TV show is not The Apprentice, as you saw from the slide earlier. I used to be an apprentice back at IBM in 2015, is when I started my apprenticeship as a Z Systems release engineer. Now 5 years on, almost 5 years on, don't want to make myself feel old, I'm now a software developer on the Galata project, which you guys will hear a bit about later from Mike and Will, who are my lovely managers. So I thought I'd keep it a bit of fun as well, tell you what my favorite DevOps tool is. Obviously, it is Jenkins, the powerhouse of the automation world. And you could see on the presentation a lovely picture of the Jenkins man with his arms flexing. There we go. So recently I returned from secondment. I was away at a business partner on secondment, which is described to me originally when I did it for the first time as basically being out on loan like a footballer. So I was away for 12 months working at a business partner to then come back to IBM later on. So while I was there, I was an infrastructure support and solutions designer, which is quite a big jump from being a Z Systems release apprentice for 3 years. I was thrown quite out of my depth there. My time there was actually spent thanks to the first of these MainframerZ Meetups and the presentation that I did originally. I did a presentation about what life as an apprentice was like in the mainframe space, and it went reasonably well for me. So let's see how today goes. Now, I could sit here and talk till the cows come home about all of the differences between working at IBM and working at a business partner. But today, I'm just going to be specifically talking about the differences in DevOps and a few of the key similarities that enabled me to adapt to a completely new working style at a business partner. So to begin with, a large portion of the differences that I noticed were in my change of job role specifically. So in IBM, originally, I was just being involved with Kix developers, trying to see what was going wrong with their builds, and then specializing myself in a certain build process and learn that like the back of my hand, and that would be my sort of systems life cycle, so to speak. But when I went out to the business partner, I was involved in a lot more of the process from start to finish. So I was talking to clients about the requirements for their software stack, all the way down to provisioning the volumes on the storage devices that those applications would eventually use. I was involved from the top down in the sort of DevOps lifecycle, which enabled me to get a much deeper understanding for how all of the different aspects of it work. I definitely felt at the time like I knew a lot more of the minute details, but I was surprised at how few issues I had, considering I was the only infrastructure support in this country. The rest of the infrastructure support, which was 2 other guys, were both working out in Bulgaria, and they somehow were better at responding to me than most of the sellers that we had in England. So it was an interesting time. I especially didn't expect to learn a non-programming language while I was working for a business partner, Nadraba. That means cheers in Bulgarian for anyone interested. Something that I'd also grown accustomed to whilst I was working at IBM was the procedures and the guidelines that are in place for most of the pieces of work that you're asked to do or what you help out with. There'll be a work item that you can update and say this is the piece of work you're working on, or a GitHub issue or something along those lines that you can track your work with. When I went to go work at the business partner, I remember quite well in my first sort of few days, I was asked to set up my own LPAR on a mainframe. And I thought, okay, that's an interesting piece of work. Don't know how to do that. Is there a work item anywhere, you know, that I can keep track of all of this and write notes for the future? And everyone just sort of started chuckling and laughing at me, and I was looking around the room a bit confused. So yeah, it took me leaving IBM to realize that not everywhere has these procedures and these guidelines that you have to sort of stringently follow. It's kind of a bit more up to your own discretion, which has its upsides and its downsides depending on who you're talking to. So yeah, I realized at that point that the differences in the way that I was having to work at the business partner meant that I needed to be a bit more self-motivated and self-driven, and all of the work that I was given, there wasn't going to be someone checking a work item every day to see how much I was getting on with. It was more, you know, do it yourself, or in 3 weeks' time someone's going to realize you haven't done this and then you're going to get yelled at. So it's interesting for me to see how then coming back to IBM, I've gone back to sort of how things were in the first place, but I've got a lot of skills from working from home and working in that environment that have adapted me. So in terms of similarities and what really made it simple for me to sort of wrap my head around work that I would be doing at this business partner that was completely different to what I'd been doing at IBM was the tooling. The tooling that's used across the board is completely the same, which is why I didn't feel overwhelmed. Ansible automation, Docker containers, they were a very, very welcome sight when I was looking at well, what do you call it, mainframe support element for the first time. It was very nice to see Ansible automation and Docker containers in that sense. And one of the tasks I was asked to do when I started working for the business partner was to create a Jenkins instance that would create a virtual machine for a client that was on a KVM running on a mainframe. Now, that wasn't actually that difficult to do, as difficult as it might sound. It was essentially just creating a Jenkins job that ran a shell script, which is a lot easier than you'd expect. But if it wasn't for IBM originally introducing me to Jenkins and originally introducing me to how all of these different DevOps tools can link together, I wouldn't have known the first thing about how to start that process. But there are some similarities between what you're being asked to do within the DevOps world. Another thing along those lines is the automating everything sort of aspect of thinking of DevOps. That was the main thing that I was told at IBM, and it was one of the main things that I was sort of looking out for when I started working at this business partner, was to see what tasks I was doing repetitively and how I might be able to automate those in whatever way I could think of, whether it be Jenkins, Ansible, Docker, just a shell script that I was running from my machine. There were many different ways of doing it. And as I say, because there wasn't as much procedures and guidelines around it, I had a bit more of my own sort of creativity I could use and innovate wherever I thought I wanted to. Yeah, so as I say, the key principles, main one for me was being automating everything, but there are a fair few different principles that there might be similarities between depending on where you are. The one big thing that I've noticed from leaving IBM and then coming back in the past 6 weeks or so is that the way that DevOps is treated is completely different from place to place. There's no two companies that are going to use it the exact same way, and even then within companies, you're not going to find teams that use it the same way. Everything's depending on circumstance. So what's important is to look out for the similarities in previous pieces of work, think about what worked in that scenario, and then try to implement a sort of similar way of doing it, but for the new task that you're working on. But I would say it's important to never be too scared to ask questions. Stupid questions go a long way, just in showing that you're trying to figure something out. I've asked countless stupid questions as an apprentice, countless stupid questions as a business partner, and I'm sure Will and Mike can attest to the fact that I've asked some pretty stupid questions recently. It's just something you have to do. So there is plenty more to DevOps that I haven't even scratched the surface of, and I'm sure is going to be, things that I learn in the future of my career. I'm only 23. I think there's still plenty for me to touch upon. So yeah, that's been my talk. I hope it's been reasonably informative about the differences between DevOps at an IBM and a business partner. If you have any questions, then I'll be here at the end for a Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Robbie. And then we're going to move on to Will and Mike.
So, hello, welcome. My name's Will Yates, and joining me on the call, I've got Mike Bayliss, and we're here to talk to you about a new open source test framework that we've been working on for perhaps the past decade or so in total. And it all came about because we both work within Kix. Now, I'm pretty sure the majority of people on this call know what Kix is and perhaps used it, but for those that haven't, Kix is a mixed language application server that runs on the Z platform. And it allows applications built up of programs written in a range of languages to execute within the same programming context of transactionality, security, monitoring, and management. And over the past 50 years, businesses have built the core of their applications and the core of their business on Kix. And as part of the team that helped build Kix and build the next releases of Kix, we kind of set ourselves a little challenge. And I want to pass over to Mike, who's going to explain what that challenge was.
So during the agile transformation that KixTS has been going through over the last 5 years, we came to the realization quite quickly that you can't take 3 months to get a change from the developer to a beta build so our customer can play and experiment with it. So we set ourselves an ambitious goal of getting a change from a developer to a beta build within 24 hours, which is fine, no problem at all. You can build Kix in 3 hours. But the problem is we don't want just the change going to the beta build in an untested manner. So it has to be fully regression tested before it gets there. And that was the problem, because none of our test frameworks that we had in place at the time would be able to run the thousands upon thousands of regression tests in the short amount of period that requires to get done. So we were in the process at that time of writing a new testing framework called JAT. Now, the reason we started writing a new testing framework is we went out and looked hard for any test framework that could handle the level of integration that we required with Kix, because Kix can talk to many subsystems and many off-platform products, platforms, and protocols. But we wanted one simple test framework that can do the lot, and there was nothing out there that would do that. All the test frameworks were very good at their area, but straight outside of that, and they struggle. So we created a framework called JAT that had deep integration with ZOS, understood ZOS properly, and all the subsystems and everything else, and it was extensible. So you can add new plugins, new managers, as we call them, that can support new products, new protocols, and add that to the test framework. And we wanted to write a framework that a tester coming out of university can pick up quickly and hide the complexity that is unfortunately there within ZOS. We had to make it highly scalable, and because it's Java, it was in an Eclipse plugin. So therefore you can test your test code, put breakpoints in and step through, and be able to create Kix regions, MQQs, DB2 subsystems, open LDAP, Docker images, all those sorts of things by just a couple of lines of code, and you can step through it. Next slide then, Will. But there was a slight problem. We were very successful with this. We can run hundreds of thousands of tests in a month and be able to ensure the quality of Kix. We demonstrated this product, JAT, to our customers, and each one says, well, can we have JAT? And because of the way we architected it and wrote it, it used a lot of internal IBM code, and therefore we couldn't give it to them. So we decided to completely re-architect JAT to be a free, and I mean free, open source product that allows you to test your ZOS applications alongside all your other platforms. I'm talking about cloud, Linux, Windows, and all those sorts of things, and be able to fill the hole that is in the DevOps pipeline at the moment to be able to do proper ZOS integration tests. Now, Bayliss is not a unit test tool. It is for integration, functional testing and above, and can be driven from Jenkins. It could be driven from your laptop. It could be driven from quite a few open source DevOps pipeline tooling, like UCD, for example. It's completely flexible. You can add to it. You can add your own managers to it, so you can support your own applications. So it understands your applications better, how to provision it, what builds it is, and et cetera, is written in such a way that you can write tests very, very quickly without having to worry about the boilerplate code that would normally come from having to spin up Docker images, spin up ZOS Kix regions, spin up and define schemas in DB2. All that lot's hidden, and just by a couple of lines of code, you can get most of that integration in place, which means you can write more tests, you can run them faster, and you can scale them up, and to be able to ensure the quality of your product before you go to production very much quicker than we used to by the manual testing that we used to do in the old days within Kix. Over to you, Will.
Cheers, Mike. So The way that Galassa is architected is very much with that extensibility in mind. We provide the Galassa framework and the test engine that combines a sequence of managers, each representing a certain part of the ZOS operating system, an item on the middleware stack, a piece of test technology such as Selenium or JMeter, and any managers that have been provided by vendors to support their applications. And the Galassa framework combines all this together and provides a unified interface to the test material that you write, meaning that a test written in Galassa can do some really, really complex integration testing. Imagine I'm driving a web UI that is the front-facing digital experience for my client, and I can use Selenium to navigate that web UI and to pull data and to send new requests into the system. But I'm also able to run ZOS batch jobs, interrogate DB2 databases, run Kix transactions, and use the Galassa framework to bring all of those bits of data together to validate my test. Did my test pass or did my test fail? So it's allowing you to integrate a whole range of ZOS and non-ZOS applications and test them as a single hybrid cloud enterprise application. I know that can seem a little bit complex. There's quite a lot to really get your head around. So we came up with a way to try and make learning about Galassa as simple as possible. And that's through Galassa SimBank. Galassa SimBank is a small application that you can run on your laptop, and it allows you to get the feel of testing a ZOS application without necessarily having to go near your mainframe. Galassa SimBank is a simulated ZOS application that you can run from your laptop, and we provide that within the Galassa framework, and we then also provide a set of example tests that you can run, you can execute against that application to get to grips with how Galassa hangs together, how it works, and how the test cases can be written. Now, the test cases that you write and the ones we supply don't know that it's not connected to a real mainframe. In fact, if we ported the SimBank application to a mainframe, you could run the same test against the same application without any code changes. And this is available today. You can download it, and you can play with it, and you can start to get to grips with what Galassa is. Our first release of Galassa was only back in December of last year, which for us feels a little while ago now, but since then we've released another 3 releases. So we've got 3 releases out in the wild right now. And you can see from the date stamps, we're releasing roughly with a monthly cadence, which means that, well, February was last month and we're kind of getting to the end of March, so there might be a new release just around the corner. And you can see all the things that we've added into Galassa over those releases. We started off small with Galassa SimBank and a few ZOS managers. We've now got over 10 whole new managers supporting things like ZOS commands, ZOS batch, Kix Keki, and coming hopefully soon, we'll have the alpha versions of our Selenium manager and our JMeter manager. So we're slowly starting to realize some of that capability that we've been promising. We value your contribution. We don't want just people to use Galassa, but of course we want people to use Galassa. We want people to join us as a community. Yes, this is a project that a few of us in IBM have started, but the point is that it's not always going to be an IBM-led run project. We want Galassa to have a community of people behind it that can add new code and take it forward, because if we all work together, we'll make Galassa smarter than we can if we just use it internally. So come join us. The website galassa.dev is available now, and you can learn all about Galassa, and you can download the code and you can start playing with it today. If you want to start engaging with us, then we have a Spectrum chat which you can join, and you can talk to us, perhaps give us your problems, discuss any new ideas that you've had or ways of using Galassa. And finally, if you want to get stuck into the source code, then all of our source is available on GitHub. We're building this thing out in the open. We're not building it internally and then just mirroring it out into the wide world. It's built in the open, Our project management is in the open. Please come join us and learn what you can do with Balasa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Rosalind.
So I'm happy to be able to share this session with you today. It's a little unusual in being invited to a meetup in London and sitting in North Carolina. So normally I'm traveling all around the world, and now I'm enjoying my home and my family a little bit more, which I guess I have to look at the bright side. So what I want to talk to you about today is infrastructure as code. And you heard my original discussion about DevOps, and I've been talking about DevOps and DevOps principles for quite a while, and we have quite a few companies that have done this transformation or transition to really get towards DevOps. But the thing that we are still lacking is understanding how the system itself, how can we do infrastructure as code as part of the solution? How can we make sure that we can provide, in a sense, ZOS as a service to all of these pipelines and these teams? And the first thing I wanted to start out with, well, what is infrastructure as code? And on the distributed side, we've had it for a while. We have YAML files, we have configuration. Everything to define that system is stored in an SCM. And so I can easily recreate that. And I might be using numbers of different tools, for example, Ansible to do that creation. I could be building images and using environments such as OpenShift. But I've got the definition for that infrastructure as part of my SCM, so I can recreate it at any time. In the ZOS world, we've sort of been doing that as well, at least to some extent. We have a system image, we have the sysres. It's defined once usually and shared across the environments, shared across a sysplex, et cetera. And in general, we've had JCL that was used to define that system. And so if you could find the JCL, you could find how it was defined. But that doesn't make it easy for developers or for anyone in this new world. What if I want a new development environment? What if I want, spin up a new space and get work done? That's hard to do unless I know how it's defined and I have all of that configuration information. And I want to do it in a way consistent with everything else. Now, ZOS is different. And no matter what we want to say, we can make ZOS as close to other environments from a development standpoint, from a working with a system, but it's still going to have a set of differences. And those are differences we care about. It provides the scalability, the reliability that other systems don't have. It has workload management in ways that no other system has or needs because you can't run that kind of workload. All of those differences are going to exist, but how do we work with the system in a way that this next generation can find it as easy as using a pipeline for development? When we think about that, we start with what's your pipeline? And I know that might sound a little unusual, but when we think about infrastructure as code, it's really, we're just using a pipeline the same way we're using a pipeline for any other system. And a lot of people talk about Jenkins, and Jenkins is a very popular pipeline and works very well with ZOS because the agent actually runs on ZOS. So it works very efficiently to allow you to use all the same processes, all the same capability. And if Jenkins is your pipeline, then you plug in the infrastructure portions the same way as you've plugged in everything else. You store your configuration the same way and use tools such as Ansible to build up those playbooks to be able to configure and do what you need to do. You'll notice on this screen the Azure DevOps pipeline, and I put it here for a reason.
one of the things that is really important in this discussion about DevOps and transformation and cultural change is ZOS should work with the rest of the systems. And so if Azure DevOps is your pipeline of choice for all the rest of your development, then there's absolutely no reason you can't use that for ZOS as well. It can work with Ansible playbooks to do that configuration of the environment. But when we think about infrastructure as code for ZOS, we need to think about it in a few specific ways. We do have a sysres, and we do have install of our software. The software install, SMPE, is different than other environments. And so we do have ZOS-specific tools to do that part. You can automate it. You can use ZOSMF with the install technology in order to install the system itself, to install the kicks, install IMS. It's the installation of the software that needs to be done. But after that installation and basic configuration, the creation of those resources are things that should be delegated to the pipeline, should be part of this process, should be defined as infrastructure as code. So if I need a KICS region, I create it as part of my pipeline using an Ansible playbook, using a ZOSMF workflow, but it's as part of the pipeline. It's being called as an API as part of this pipeline, and so it's done in a consistent way. And the developers themselves, well, they don't have to care. It's part of the pipeline that's being done for them. As a system programmer, well, yes, you probably care. You're the one that's creating this definition. You're the one that's creating the definition that allows this automation to take place. And by putting all of this in the SCM, we can share that information. Today, I talk to many system programmers, and they talk about the fact that, well, if I do it, it's out of my JCL. And if someone else does it, well, it's using their JCL. By doing this, we're sharing those resources and bringing it together. In working with lots of companies, I get the question, okay, but how do I start? Where should I start? What should I start thinking about? And this first one, I guess, bothers me the most in many ways, but it's start using USS, learn that USS exists as part of ZOS, turn it on and allow everyone access to it. Start getting familiar with those pipeline tools. Install Git on ZOS and see how it works. Work with the pipeline. Learn how these pieces can work on the system and how they work just as well for ZOS as for any other platform. Use things like Python on the system or Groovy, which you can get from DBV. Make sure you play and experiment and understand what's available and can be done, and start working with those younger system programmers. We had one organization bring in 2 new system programmers, and they built up a whole bunch of stuff using Groovy. And by sharing that with the other system programmers, they can all learn, they all have this new automation, and they can now make it easier for development teams to have the resources they need. One thing that's really important about infrastructure as code is this doesn't mean our systems go wild. It doesn't mean everybody gets to do everything. And developers, it doesn't mean you get to have all the systems you really want unless you understand you're giving them up. So you deploy a system, you run the tests, and you throw it away. We're getting into this new world of bring up what you need and then let it go away at the end, because you can always bring it back when you need to. Tools like ZDNT or Z development and test environments makes this easy, or you can do it on real Z hardware using automation. Either way works, any way that works for your organization. This idea of bringing up, using, and throwing away is important. But as you do this, remember, the throw away is as important as the create when we get to infrastructure as code. having the definitions necessary to recreate on the fly, but also delete when required. Hopefully this was a short, quick introduction to infrastructure as code and how you, from an infrastructure standpoint, can fit into this process and how development can work with you. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Rosalind. So what we'll do now is open questions from everybody. So if I just pop the Slack channel back up so you can see that.
This is Atul here. I have a question.
Take it away.
Okay, Rosalind, how do the performance and capacity teams feel about allowing people to bring up their own environments?
Isn't that a fun question? The answer is, remember I said tear down? One of the things that's really important about this infrastructure as code and build up and tear down is the build up and tear down. If you're building up dev environments, you have to make it so they come up and they go away. So you're paying attention to the capacity that you actually have. Right now, most organizations that I work with have a dev region or set of dev regions. One case, 180 some dev regions. How much are those being used? Not much. Some during the day. How about spin up, spin down? And if we really do this right, you actually can use the real Z hardware capacity and performance for real performance test before you actually go to production, which is the thing I would really like to see. If more people would do performance tests not in production, so they find those problems earlier. But it's a cultural change. You have to accept spin up, spin down. You don't just hold on to things forever.
Great, thank you very much.
And if anyone else has any questions, please do put them either in the chat on the right-hand side or in Slack, or you can raise your hand in WebEx and we should be able to unmute you and go through it that way. Any other questions for any of the speakers at all?
Sophie, we've had a general question from, I think, one or more people just on is this meeting being recorded and will the presentations be available? So we'll chat with all the presenters today to just check that they would be okay with us sharing their presentations, and this session has been recorded. So in our Slack group, there is a presentations channel. We'll make sure the recording is there and individual presentations are uploaded, and we'll probably do the same in the Meetup group as well. So just give us a couple of days to sort that out, but we do want to make the material available to people.
Okay, so we have one question, which is, how do you deal with environmental differences such as RACA file name differences, etc.? I'm not sure who that's specifically to.
If you're talking about infrastructure as code, environment-specific information should also be in the SCM, but all of your definitions and configuration, all the scripts should be built in an environment-neutral way, and then you have environment-specific information.
Thank you. We've got a few people typing at the moment, so we've got, okay, so we've got one that is there some overlap between what Galassa can do and what Z infrastructure as code can do?
Okay, so that's a really good question. So Galassa, all of the resources that a Galassa test uses, including the test code, any resources it may need to provision or to alter part of the environment, are all held within a source code management system. So there's we're always going back to that original tester project or the original SCM to get all those types of things. So if you've got a piece of infrastructure as code that you need to run or you need to execute as part of your test, because you kind of got this blurred line between your environment or so your infrastructure provisioning and the test provisioning, then Galassa can get hold of those artifacts and can execute them. So that may be a sequence of ZOS batch jobs or a Rex file, or whatever it may be. The point would be that Galassa can access those resources and execute them. So yes, there is a little bit of overlap.
But if we do infrastructure as code in the SCM and have the definitions there, then they would be shared and used.
Yes.
So they should work together. But we should think about that. Good point.
I can see it's a gentleman called Sunil who, Sunil has raised the question. I know Sunil very well. Thanks, Sunil. Great question.
Great. Any more questions? Any hand raises I'm not seeing?
We have had a question that's being answered on the Slack channel, but it may be worth just for the audience to hear it as well. So there's a question that, can Zowe be incorporated in the Dallas AD/CD distribution? Now, I know Joe Winchester has kindly given a response there, but if Rose is available, it'd be good to just explain what AD/CD is, and that may be helpful for the audience interested in Zowe.
Well, the AD/CD is the way customers can get the AD/CD is through the product called ZD&T, so Z Development and Test Environments. And we build the AD/CD with a set of products. It is an image of all of the IBM products mostly available, so customers have access to a test environment. They can also create an image from their own Z environment to run on ZD&T, but if you use the AD/CD, it does have a configuration of a set of products. And we have been working with the AD/CD to understand how to get Zowe on the AD/CD in a reasonably configured way. Don't know exactly when it will be available, but it is something we are working on.
Just for the record, that definitely syncs with the way Joe responded to the question in Slack. Thanks, Rosalind.
Good. I was hoping.
Okay, and then we have another question, which is, how can teams get involved when their unit of work is changing into new technologies like ZCC for containerization and ZML for machine learning?
I guess I know myself, I'm struggling to quite understand what the question means. I don't know if the person that raised the question would mind perhaps rephrasing it or adding a little bit more context.
We can come back to that one if we get any more details on there. Okay, so I think the question is, how can teams get involved when they're all adapting to new technologies? Okay, hang on. You can ask himself, he's unmuted. Okay, maybe we'll leave that one for now. Joe is answering in Slack anyway, so.
Hello. Actually, I was asking a question. If I can ask anyway. What I mean is, there are new technologies just coming around, like ZML, like the machine learning technologies, which is applicable for the mainframes, and there ZCX for containerization technologies, which is applicable for the mainframes also. And the technology is rapidly moving and fastly evolving. What I mean is, how can the teams changing their working principles and working strategies, which around these new technologies? And thank you very much. Anyone can answer this. And how can they change pipelines and so on?
I think I'll say something briefly, and then someone else can add on. I think it's a very real, valid thing. The underlying technology that we're in, the space we're in, is moving at a very fast pace. Just thinking of products like Maven, Jenkins, Gradle, software, and underlying things, containers, Kubernetes. The technology is moving at a fast rate. I think being modular, I think the approach we take is being consistent, having a clear approach, but having that ability to be modular and switch in new pieces as they come available, as the market gets the traction in them.
I think if we think about specifically the ZOS space, we have been particularly, in some places, stagnant in paying attention to the changes that were going on in the industry, which is the only reason the ZOS development process looks exactly the same as it did 30 years ago. We can't afford to do that. If I look at the Kix development team, they didn't do that. They haven't been stagnant. They've done all sorts of things all these years to modify, change, improve, whatever. That's how we got JAT. That's how we got. So all of us have to learn that the world isn't going to stand still and let us stay where we were. We have to keep learning and adapting. And yes, it's harder in some ways, but it also gives us more opportunity with all of the automation that's going on to experiment, to play, and we should be prepared for this. Okay, what's the next thing tomorrow? How is that going to help me?
If I can chip in as well, I think my advice would be to start small and experiment, build some smaller successes and grow with that. But I think bear in mind, you are working for an enterprise. You've got longevity in your applications, your environments. We don't want to bring in technology that you know is going to last. So it's part of the strategy in terms of how it's considered. So you've got to experiment. You've got to learn about it. Speak to other peers in the marketplace. See what they're doing with it. And if it's not going very far, very fast, then and keep it small. See if you can make it work. But don't deploy it widely until you're certain, because it could be a gamble that doesn't pay off.
Just to add to that, when you're perhaps looking at tools that you want to use, choosing tools that are perhaps open or have some sort of community behind them can perhaps sometimes have some benefit, because it does mean that you can have a wider group of people, a wider community of people who may be using it, so you can kind of speak to them about how they've done things, or you can change things about how the tool works. You're not locked into a specific vendor.
And one final comment, I would also add that, perhaps you have, or your company is forming a center of excellence around some of these initiatives. Having conversations with those folks and understanding the general direction of your company and the enterprise could also perhaps provide you with some good guidelines.
Great, thank you. Do we have any more questions?
Sophie, there's been a general question about how can I get involved in the team, in the MainframerZ team?
Yep. Do you want to cover that, or do you want me?
Go for it.
Yes, I think if you're interested in getting involved, I'd say come and join us on Slack and we can just have a conversation. I think depending on what it is you're able to provide, depending on if it's something like financial or if it's just your time, depending on what you're able to provide and how much time you're able to provide, we can kind of look at what different options would kind of suit you. Do you have anything to add to that, Matt?
No, I think the interesting, because of the current time with us being locked down and isolated and doing, it's been a good opportunity for us to trial this event as an online. So going previously, with our focus had been London, and we were putting on three to four events a year. That still would be our attention when things change here in terms of isolation and distancing. So we would be looking for people businesses that would be happy to host in London, as well as speakers, as well as people helping out with organising. But equally, right now, we want to almost build on the momentum of having an online meetup event. So we appreciate that many of you wouldn't have the ability to attend in person in London. So at this stage, we're considering cadence of events. Previously, we were doing 3 or 4 a year. We may look to put them on more regularly because it's an easier format for us to put on as an online event. So something along every 4 to 6 weeks. So at this stage, we're just interested in feedback. If you would be interested in attending this type of event in an online format, in a location format. And also, in terms of our bandwidth as a team, London is all we are able to do in terms of a physical location, but there has been talk about other MainframerZ events in any other geographies in the UK and globally. So again, we'd be really interested in hearing from you if you'd be interested in running equivalent events in other locations. So yeah, really broad. We really want to get a wider pool of people involved and happy to chat more.
Matt, do you want to say a bit about how people can give their feedback?
Yes, I think so. We were going to do it as a WebEx poll. We don't have that now. So I think what we'll do is we'll set up, we'll do that after the event. We will send something out requesting people's feedback separately.
We'll do a SurveyMonkey survey and put it onto the Slack channel.
Fantastic. So we can put it on the Slack channel and we can put it up on the Meetup group as well.
Okay, there was one more question in the chat, which was, are there any plans to launch a Master Mainframe-like program for experienced professionals? I don't think I've personally heard of anything. I don't know if anyone else has anything to chip in, but I would personally say that kind of the trial is kind of, unless it doesn't have the kind of competitive nature to it, but if you're just wanting to kind of get up and started with playing with things in an environment that's not yours, then Z trial is a good way to go. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of anything else that would kind of be relevant.
I'd recommend, if anybody's interested in something like that, raising the question with a man called Paul Fairburn or a lady called Bethany Simpson. They're both involved in what's going on with Master the Mainframe, and they'll be interested in any new ideas that are coming forward. So feel free to reach out to them.
We can put some information on the Slack channel about Master the Mainframe for anyone that hasn't heard of it. Bethany spoke at our last meetup event, and Paul did, on the subject, and we can put a link up on our Slack channel to find out more.
Nick has also kindly pointed out that there's also the badges that you can collect. So there's now a few different IBMZ badges that you can do. So you can provide links for that as well if that would help people. Okay, do we have anything else, or should we call it a day? I think we should just about wrap up. So thank you very much everybody who's attended, and thank you to all of our speakers and our helpers for everyone that's put this together. You will hear from us very shortly with a survey to fill out, giving us feedback, and we'd love for you to let us know what you'd like to hear next time. If there's specific content you'd like to hear about, or if there's specific presentations you'd be willing to give yourself, then that'd be really helpful. Hopefully you'll hear from us soon, and we'll hear from you soon. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.